Take that.
Hello, nerds, and welcome back. Oh, it has been 2 weeks and we have missed you. I'm Josh,
What's up, guys? And I'm Ted.
and this is another episode of Nerds Make Sense. So today's subject is going to be a little more somber. I know the intro was really enthusiastic. We are trying some changes out here on the channel, but as most people know, earlier this week, the nerd community lost one of its icons. On Monday, November 12th, Stan Lee, the man essentially responsible for bringing comic books to what they are today, passed away. And today's episode, we wanted to talk a little bit about his life, the influence that he's had on the comic book community and just media in general, and also the influence that he's had on our lives. Because, to be honest, without him, there's a very good chance this channel wouldn't even, and other channels like it wouldn't even exist. He was such a revolutionary in his own field, and was just kind of, so many people who have gotten to meet him throughout the years, unfortunately, that will never happen for us, but they've said how much of a joy it was to be able to meet him, to just be able to talk to him and listen to what he had to say. So, without further ado, here's our tribute to the great Stan Lee. He was born December 28th, 1922. His given name was Stanley Martin Lieber. And he was a Manhattan boy, born to a Romanian Jewish family, Celia and Jack Lieber. He also had a younger brother by the name of Larry. And they moved around New York quite a bit as he was growing up. While he was still, I believe while he was in high school, he actually started working some part-time jobs. And he was doing, it's kind of funny to think about this, but he started out writing obituaries for a news service and then also doing press releases for the National Tuberculosis Center. I doubt anybody who has an enjoyment of writing ever dreams about being able to, or ever dreams about doing that for a living. But a crazy thing about him, he actually graduated high school at the age of 16. I mean, that's 2 years earlier than most of us. So he was obviously a credibly intelligent man. Mm-hmm. And he had a passion for writing at a very early age. Many people who knew him knew that he always, in his early days, he had an idea to write the quote unquote great American novel. So he saw doing these little writing jobs here and there, and then even when he first got involved with the comic book industry as a launching point to eventually be able to do that. With the help of one of his uncles, in 1939, he actually became an assistant in what was then known as Timely Comics, which would later be known as Atlas Comics, and of course, in the 60s, it became known by its more noticeable name, Marvel Comics. Mm-hmm. And at first, he started out doing little things. At first, he would make sure that the writers and the artists' inkwells were full. Um, he went down and he got their lunch for them, and he would also do proofreading of the comics, and he would erase the pencil marks on the finished pages. And then he actually later on he ended up making his comic book debut as a text filler. So the guy that writes in all the text in the bubbles. At least I think that's what it is. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to be giving out false information here. But the first comic book he ever did was Captain America Foils the Traitor's Revenge, in Captain America Comics number 3. But would it surprise you to know that this is the first known use of the pseudonym Stan Lee, because he was actually embarrassed to be associated with comic books at the time. So he used the Stan Lee name to keep anybody from knowing, anybody from associating his real name with the comic book industry. But he's actually one of the ones behind the idea for using Captain America using his shield as a weapon. So later on, in about August of 1941, he actually he co-created his first superhero, the Destroyer, in Mystic Comics number 6. And then he went on to help co-create the likes of he went on to co-create the likes of Jack Frost, Father Time, and several others. And when the current or the editor at the time, and his partner Jack Kirby, who was a big figure for the Marvel company later on, they left the company in 1941. And at the age of 19, mind you, Stan Lee became the interim editor and was later named the permanent editor-in-chief for the comic book company. So, I mean, from a very young age, I mean, they saw his talent, and by the 1950s, the company became known as Atlas Comics. And then, of course, in the 1960s, they were known as Marvel. And here's what kind of led to the beginning of the comic book revolution into what we know it as today. DC Comics back in the 1950s basically revived the whole superhero archetype, and with new Flash comics, and of course the creation of the Justice League of America. And so Martin Goodwin, the publisher of Marvel Comics at the time, had actually tasked Lee with coming up with a superhero team of their own. I don't know how known this fact is, but Lee himself was actually planning on getting out of the comic book business because he still wanted to pen his great novel. So he went and he talked to his wife, and his wife told him, well, why don't you create something that you've always wanted to create? Do your idea, because she was thinking that, okay, well, he's still planning on leaving, so you might as well go out with, something of your own. And so Lee, he went in and he actually did this, and it was the first time anything like this was ever done, giving superheroes flaws. Before that, they'd always been the perfect do-gooder, can do no wrong type of person. But when Stan Lee went in and created teams like the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, he gave them flawed personalities. You know, they actually experienced, emotions, personal traumas, things that affected their character. And so essentially, he created the comic books that we now know and love. With superheroes who actually seem human to us, unlike the original Superman and people like that who were just absolutely perfect and couldn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, we can relate to them more.
Yeah.
Like Stan Lee said in like an article, I think it was an interview actually. Like the reason why he loves Spider-Man so much. I know I kind of jumped the gun on Spider-Man, but it's because like the best thing about him was he had a mask on. So as kids growing up, they couldn't see who Spider-Man was, so he can be anyone he wanted. So like, for instance, like I like to cosplay with my friends. Sometimes, as me, I can't be certain people because I'm not the race or color, Yeah. But with Spider-Man, he had the mask on. Anybody can be Spider-Man.
Right.
You can be any race and be Spider-Man. You can have the powers and imagine yourself. So that's what Stan Lee, when he made his characters, was really relatable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of characters that are relatable. Yeah, you can't relate to Superman. I can't just
okay.
pick up a truck and get shot and live.
Yeah.
Like, so he was really good at making him relatable to the reader. So you could be like, oh man, I want to be here.
And it inspired people of that time to want to be comic book writers and artists themselves. And he and Jack Kirby, one of the things that they really wanted to do was they wanted the reader to feel like they were friends with the creators of these comics. They wanted to be able to know people on a personal level. They wanted people to see them on a personal level. So while other companies like DC, they would when they would do mailbags, you would see people mailing in their letters and they would be signed "Dear Editor," whereas the letters that were coming into Marvel were all being addressed "Dear Stan" or "Dear Jack" or whoever happened to be working on that specific comic. And it was a level of intimacy that was brought to the process of creating these comics that it really brought everybody back in to wanting to read comics. All of a sudden, instead of just little kids wanting to read comics, it was teenagers, it was young adults, and that's what he was going for. He was looking for a revival of what had been lost after the 50s. And of course, he co-created some of the greatest comic book heroes that we know today: the Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, the X-Men. Daredevil he worked on, Doctor Strange, and of course the most successful Marvel comic book character to date, Spider-Man, as you mentioned. And another thing that he did was he brought them all into this shared universe, which was something that really hadn't been done before. Sure, you had the Justice Society, and then later on you had the Justice League of America. But other than those comics, you never really saw any mention to anybody else in their own personal comics. So, like, if you were reading a comic of Batman, you rarely ever saw a reference to Superman or Wonder Woman or The Flash outside of a Justice League comic. Whereas if you were reading a Spider-Man comic, you could see a reference to Doctor Strange or Iron Man at any given time, and it was definitely something that was new. And also, Stanley, excuse me, sorry, I'm on the back end of recovering from a cold. Um, but Stan Lee and Jack Kirby also are responsible for probably one of the best superhero teams of all time. And I'm not talking about the Fantastic Four. I'm talking about the one, the only, the Avengers. And with that, came the revival of characters like the Submariner and the Great Captain America.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was a great time to be in the comic book industry. And I think now, we're seeing another surge of that as well with the success of the the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I mean, he's basically the reason why you get the gritty Batman comics now, because he did it first. He's the reason why you've got the more flawed Superman now. Mind you, he never did any direct work with DC Comics. But I mean, he's essentially his work essentially influenced everybody at basically any other comic book company into being able to do what it is they do now, or what they're capable of doing now. He even made. There was a thing called the Comics Code, and it was basically it was a what you can and can't do in comics. And at the time, any depiction of drugs was just a complete no-no. Yeah. But the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare had actually asked him to do a comic book story about the dangers of drugs, and Stan Lee had actually come up with an idea to do that in several of his Spider-Man comics. But at first, the Comics Code Authority absolutely refused to grant its seal. And they were saying, no, you can't do this. So he went ahead and published it anyways. And it was such a big hit with people at the time that it essentially changed the way that, once again, it changed the way comics were thought to be able to work. You can now, he always wanted to put messages essentially from the real world into his comics so that way people could relate even more. And that was, and it just keeps going back to that. He always, he wanted people to be able to relate to the stories that he was penning. Mm-hmm. And, like I said, it's what allowed, it's what has allowed comics books to, once again, be what they are today. I'm going to say this right now. I'm not a huge comic book reader, but even I know the significance of what they've had. My favorite comic book character is Batman. And it's the Batman of today, essentially. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't have that if it weren't for Stan Lee. He'd still be the the
goofy Batman.
Yeah.
Shark repellent.
Yeah, he'd still essentially be that kind of a Batman today if it weren't for, maybe not. I would imagine these changes would have come at some point, but we can thank Stan Lee for having them come as quickly as they did. But another little thing I wanted to point out is he essentially brought in the first mainstream black superhero. And he did it at a time where I'm sure people were absolutely stunned to see it. And I'm talking, of course, about Black Panther.
Black Panther. Yeah.
Give me a second here. I had this queued up, but then for some reason come on. have to do some editing on this afterwards. So, Black Panther first appeared in Fantastic Four in 1966. And, that's... You're talking 60s, 70s. That's right in the middle of the civil rights movement. So, to have a mainstream black superhero was something that was just absolutely unheard of at the time. But yet, Stan Lee was not afraid to do it.
He didn't care.
He was, but essentially by doing something like that, he was betting on the side of those fighting for their civil rights, which, was another thing you might have said to yourself, but you didn't admit publicly. And this was essentially his public admission that, he was, that he was all for equal rights for everyone, which, is definitely a good thing. It was a hard-fought battle, and unfortunately, we have to admit that it's still sort of a fight that's being fought today, but things are better. And it was just... There's so much that can be said about this man. I know he's not perfect. There are some things that he did wrong. He was human. There were some later issues of him being sued for certain things, and then, of course, he sued Marvel for certain things.
Oh, yeah. That was like, I think, that was like a friendly lawsuit. When he sued Marvel.
Well, it's because he was promised 10% for his cameo appearances, and he wasn't getting it.
I'm talking about the one where he sued because he didn't get no profits for the first Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, so, and he even said it's not even, it was like a friendly suit. Like, he's like,
yeah, it was
I
basically,
hate you guys.
it was basically, you guys promised me this, I'm going to publicly hold you to your word.
Yeah, the court settled for it too, so.
Yeah, so. And then, of course, he was later sued. Of course, he was involved in the whole Stan Lee media scandal. His involvement was never, other than him being the man who essentially started the company, his involvement doesn't go beyond that. It was actually one of his... It was a man named Peter Paul.
Peter Parker.
Nope, Peter Paul. But essentially, he was extradited to the U.S. from Brazil, and then pleaded guilty to violating an SEC rule. In connection with trading of his stock. And, but unfortunately, because of all this, and, Stan Lee Media ended up having to, or Stan Lee had to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy for the company. But he was never implicated in the scheme that essentially drowned it in the toilet. And then, of course, after that, he went on to create POW Entertainment, Purveyors of Wonder Entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
And then they created... Little funny, because I actually remember this show back on Spike TV, back when Spike TV was popular, but they created Stripperella. I never watched it.
That was on MTV too.
I never actually watched the show, so I couldn't tell you a thing of what it was about, but I thought it was funny when I found that out. And, he's in, ever since he stepped down as publisher, of Marvel, which he later became in the 70s and the 80s. He still had off and on relations with Marvel. Obviously, we've seen him in his cameos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and other Marvel movies. The only X-Men movie that he hasn't been in so far, I think, was X2.
Oh, I don't think I. He's not in there, huh?
Yeah, I think that's the only X-Men movie that he's not in. Or I don't think he was in Logan either.
Yeah, he was.
Was he in Logan?
I'm about to look that up. I watched it the other day. Actually,
I do apologize for the coughing, everyone. But I mean, like I said, he's had such an influence on so many people. Whether they be normal people like you and I, or actors and actresses, or directors and film producers. I mean, so much of what we have today and can enjoy can probably be attributed back to their childhoods of reading Marvel comics, and that's all thanks to this man, Stan Lee. He absolutely loved doing the cameos for the movies. He thought it was one of the greatest things in the world.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, he wasn't in Logan. What the heck? I swear that he was in, the casino.
That would be Black Panther.
No, I know that. Yeah, I know that he was in Black Panther. But I thought he was in the casino part. Because, when they were in the casino, when they were coming after him, I thought he was in there. I swear he was in there.
No. So I think those are the only two. I think he was in all the other X-Men movies.
Yeah, he was. He was in X3. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, always little bit parts, and I think his I forget which one he said was his favorite role, but I mean he was even involved with a couple of Marvel movies that he never had any relation to their character beforehand, like Deadpool. Mm-hmm. He was in the first one. He was the MC at the strip club.
Yeah, I bet that was his favorite one. I know that.
And then I forget what he did in the second one though.
Yeah, I don't remember, dude.
I know he was in there. And of course, in the most recent Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, he was in the car that got shrunk. Talking about his time in the 60s, paying for it now. Ant-Man and the Wasp was good. I enjoyed that movie.
Speaking of cameos, did you see the cameo he had in Teen Titans Go?
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah, that was funny. He's like, "What's up, guys? It's me, Stan Lee." And he did all those little Marvel poses, like Spider-Man, the Hulk.
Excelsior!
Yeah, and then some guy said, "Excuse me, Stan Lee, this isn't a Marvel movie. I gotta get out of here." And then he came back at the end, too, and there was a car chase scene. He jumped on the car. Or I think it was like what's it called? A golf cart scene. When he jumped on it, he was like, "Stan Lee," was like, "I don't care if this is a DC movie. I love cameos."
And that's the honest to God truth.
Yeah. He's also in Big Hero 6.
Yep,
that was crazy.
He was. He ended up playing Fred's father.
Mm-hmm. That was a good cameo. I was freaking out when that happened.
Yeah, that was definitely crazy. But enough cannot be said. There isn't enough that we can really truly say about what he's done just for the imaginations of so many people. I mean, like I said, he has influenced so many people into creating such great works that we have today. I can't even begin to go in and list all the people that he's had some sort of impact on in their lives. And of course, all the cameos that he's done in the Marvel movies, and anybody who's had a chance to meet him through that has never had anything but good things to say. And truly, we have lost an icon within the nerd community. But his legacy will live on through what he's created, through us, not just myself and Ted here, but anyone who's ever had the opportunity to enjoy one of his creations, whether it be in comic, book, or movie or TV show or animated show format. Because Marvel's made some great animated films as well. But it truly is a tragic loss, and we miss you already, Stan. But he's, this won't be the last time we get to see him. He's already filmed, from what we understand, he's already filmed several of cameos for upcoming Marvel movies. So you will see him again in the next Avengers movie. I believe, can't confirm this, but I do believe that he does have a cameo in the Captain Marvel movie that's coming up.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, any Marvel project that basically finished filming before his untimely death. Although some say, there was one of his friends that visited him, said that he seemed like he was ready to go. But like I said, anything that was filmed before his death, you'll most likely see a cameo of him in. So we will get to enjoy his presence a little bit more.
Yeah.
And like I said, he leaves behind probably one of the greatest legacies in entertainment history. And he'll live on through those that he's inspired and continue to work on such projects like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In shows like this, it's really hard to vocalize the impact that he's had on us.
Yeah, he gave all of us a voice in a sense, because, back then, when you said you liked comic books and stuff, you were labeled like a nerd and loser because you liked it. Now, you see all these people who wears all the comic stuff, It's not, you're not a nerd anymore, you're just a regular person now. And it's hard for that to get people out of that comfort zone, because even as a kid, it was hard for me to be like, oh, what do you like to do? Oh, I like comics, I like reading all this, and then they're like, oh, dude, you're just a loser. But now, you got all these macho men over here and everything, and all the cool guys, and, oh, Captain America.
They love the movies, yeah. Those movies are only there for a reason.
Yeah. So he gave us everyone a voice and, shed their skin and do what they wanted to do and like what they like and not be scared to show it. I know, since when I work with kids, and I tell them I like comic books, they're like, you like comic books? I'm like, yeah, dude.
Oh, yeah. And and the crazy thing is like I said before, I've actually gotten more into comic books as I've gotten older. Unfortunately, I don't have any physical copies. I usually read all of mine through the comic book apps. But it's just it's truly is a great thing to be able to sit here and be able to talk about stuff like this with like-minded people and share it with other like-minded people because of what he's done for us, essentially. And I doubt he ever went into it intending to create this, but he has, and I think it's honestly, I think it's our duty to carry on his legacy into the future. So, for this, I'd like to say, Stan, we thank you so much for everything that you've done. You lived such an amazing life. You've seen so many things. You've been able to create so many wonderful ideas. And I mean, just look at, you got a chance to see literally your legacy come to life on the big screen. And I can't begin to imagine how proud that must have made you feel. But I can tell you this: the nerd community will never forget your contributions. And it's such a difficult thing to put into words, and I wish I could have verbalized it better. And one thing is, though, I do regret that I will never get the chance to meet you. Like I've said over and over in this episode, you've been such an inspiration to so many of us. And you are the reason that, you're part of the reason that this channel exists, and channels like it. We get to, it's a normal thing to sit here and talk about characters who aren't real, or debate about lore of a universe that you created. So once again, just thank you. And Excelsior, my friend. Excelsior. Alright, nerds. We thank you for joining us for this very, very special episode as a tribute to the late, great Stan Lee. We're going to be coming at you with a lot more content here in the next couple of weeks. We actually, we're doing a double release today. So we appreciate you guys for coming, watching, and listening in. And don't forget, like, subscribe, leave us comments, let us know, hit us up on that YouTube comment page. Let us know. We want to hear from you. We really do appreciate it when we see those comments. We want to hear about what you want to hear. So the next episode we have coming out here in a little bit is we're going to be doing a little bit of a breakdown on the Detective Pikachu movie coming up. Yeah, we really want to talk about that. We've seen the trailer. It looks amazing. So remember, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get immediately notified when one of our episodes comes out. And until the next one, guys, see you later.
Bye.